I've said this before in a question and answer video, and I finally get to elaborate on this game, but up until The Last of Us came out, this was easily the best campaign I had played for a video game on this console generation. Hands down, this is the cream of the crop when it comes to storytelling, plots, environments, and creating something completely new in video games that you normally don't see. Fact is, you just don't see video games like this very often. It's like finding a YouTube auditor and not having to tell him to go fuck himself. Anyway, man, flashback for a minute. Originally, Bioshock was an Xbox 360 exclusive when it released. Microsoft says it was a timed exclusive. 2K says that Microsoft had to pay an ongoing fee to keep it exclusive and decided not to continue paying it. So, who knows what the story is, but for over a year, it was exclusive to one console. Now, I remember seeing the reviews and seeing how amazing it was and shit like that, but from the look of the content, it just didn't appeal to me. I mean, I see this big motherfucker in a diving suit on the cover and shit like that. How good can the game be? So when the game was announced for PlayStation 3, I decided to at least give it a try. It was released for PlayStation 3 a month before World at War and Resistance 2, so I bought it, but I was enjoying the Resistance 2 beta right up until the release of that game. So I never took this game out of the packaging when I bought it. I didn't actually play Bioshock until about 9 to 10 months after I bought it, and my god, what the fuck was I thinking? No, seriously. This greatness just sat on my shelf because I thought it was going to be an overhyped game that I wouldn't like. I couldn't have been any more wrong than I was, man. Now, I mentioned that up until The Last of Us, this was easily the best campaign, and I can sit here and waste time debating about which game was better from a campaign perspective and get into the minute details of the shit, but I'll just make this short and to the point. Both campaigns are excellent. If you like amazing stories, play both. Up until The Last of Us came out, I had no problem putting Bioshock at the top of my list of best stories and campaigns. I don't think it's the best overall game, you know, when you factor in what other games have accomplished and shit like that, some multiplayer and shit like that. But just playing the story and the campaign alone of Bioshock, anyone who played it will agree this game is brilliant. It has its flaws, which I'm going to get into, and you're going to notice it takes me a while to remember the controls up in this motherfucker. That's a small point of contention I do have with the game, but otherwise, the storytelling is absolute gold. For those of you who stupidly haven't played this game, go fucking play it. You can find it on PC, you can find it on the major consoles. Obviously, I'm talking the older console generations and not the newer ones, and its sheer brilliance deserves to be experienced by everyone, including those who don't like shooters. Now, the total story is not easy to explain because it has a ton of twists, and for starters, the game takes place in Rapture, an underwater city built by a crazy motherfucker back in the 50s and 60s when this game takes place. The idea is that Andrew Ryan, the creator of the city, doesn't like government or religion. So, he builds a city void of government or religion. Do what you want, earn your money how you want, and create anything you please. Sounds like a cool place, right? Well, that's the easiest part of the story to explain. The rest is a giant clusterfuck to explain, but apparently, the scientists down there learned how to create magic. They're actually called plasmids in this game, and you need energy called Atom to use your plasmids, you know, like fire, ice, hypnosis, telekinesis, and all that other good shit. The game also introduces these creepy little girls called Little Sisters, and they have the ability to harvest Atom from dead bodies. Since Little Sisters are completely vulnerable, being little girls and whatnot, they have big daddies to protect them, and that's the iconic character you see in the diving suit who beats the shit out of anything that will attack a little sister. You also have splicers, people who have used way too much Atom and they turn into monsters. See, kids, even in video games, if you take too many drugs, you get all fucked up. Splicers have their DNA all fucked up and become irreversibly insane, and they want more Atom. Basically, Atom is like heroin in this game. Anyways, Rapture falls into a civil war with Ryan fighting against a gangster named Fontaine. So that's why this city is falling apart. The main character that you control, Jack, survives a plane crash at the beginning of the game, which you saw, and unknowingly ventures into Rapture during the Civil War, and you're only trying to survive. That's it. Fuck the bullshit. Let's get the fuck up out this joint. Some guy by the name of Atlas is going to try and help you out. If you free his wife and kid, he'll try and help you get away. And as you progress through the city, you fight off splicers, you earn more plasmids or magic powers, you come across crazy-ass characters like Sander fucking Cohen. I still can't believe that dude called himself Sander fucking Cohen. And of course, you get to fight Big Daddies in the process. Now, that's a lot to think about right now, but the storyline twists were absolutely amazing. You find out you've been controlled this whole time. You find out that you've been manipulated this entire time and that you were used as a pawn in this civil war. You also have the choice of morality in this game. Do you harvest the Little Sisters and take their Atom, or do you save them? Choice is yours. Harvesting them gives you extra powers, but you end up killing the little girls. Saving them means you free them from the science experiment, but you don't gain as much powers as you would if you harvested them. You also have some mini hacking games for loot and shit, but overall, this game combines elements of RPGs, puzzle games, all into a first-person shooter with powers and different endings. It's a combination of all types of games, and amazingly, they pulled it off incredibly well. Now, on top of that, the world of Rapture is really amazing. I mean, Irrational Games did an amazing job of capturing the era of the 50s and the 60s, from the music, to the voice acting, to the clothing of the time, to the ads you see around the maps and shit like that. Everything in this game matches the timepiece, the colors, the artistic direction, the maps where you have brightly colored lights and shit like that, combined with a dark dungeon and backgrounds that are amazing. Oh my god. At times, it will make you feel like you're in an old survival horror game as well. Everything about this story, the setting, the writing, to the movie-like twist that they have, the grand reveal at the end of the game, all of it was well crafted. And a big reason why this game earns the praise that it did was just how well they did every single little detail. However, it does have minor issues with the game. Nothing will drag this game down too much, but like every game, no game is perfect. There are certain things that Bioshock certainly could have thought out or improved upon. My biggest frustration with the game was the inability to change the controls. You know, aside from changing your axis to inverted, there was no ability to customize your control settings. There's no button mapping on a PlayStation 3. You were stuck with the original controls, whether you liked them or not, and you couldn't do a damn thing about it. Controls are pretty familiar to all shooters, with one exception. The shoot button for your gun was the R2 button. On every other game, it's the R1 button, but here, they switched it to the R2 button. There's no aiming downside in this game, as the left trigger button allowed you to cycle through your weapons or your plasmids. The normal fire button, R1, was used for the plasmids and shit, so it took me a long time to adjust to the fact that I had to learn all these new buttons. I wasn't used to the R2 being the weapon button, and it took a shitload of time to break out of that Call of Duty muscle memory with R1 as the shooting button. Now, most people might not mind the shooting button changing and whatnot, but for those that do like the R1 as the gun shooting button, the option just wasn't there to change it. In later Bioshock games, they made that option available, but for this game, there is no option available. You are stuck with it. To adjust to that, I rarely use my gun, which leads me to my second point. The splicers really weren't that hard to fight off. Aside from maybe the spider slicer and shit like that, the overwhelming majority of enemies were extremely easy to beat. You just needed to shock them with that electric shit and whatnot, and beat them with your wrench. As the game progresses, your melee powers get stronger, while the game only introduces just a couple of tougher splicers. I would say 90% of the enemies in this game could be defeated by using a wrench only. There were very few times I actually needed to use my gun, maybe for like a security turret or something like that. Even the big daddies became a bit of an easy target. The first one to fight is a bitch, mainly because you don't have the firepower to deal with him very quickly. The big daddies are no joke at how aggressive they are, and if you're unprepared, especially in that first encounter in the game, he will beat the shit out of you senseless. But after you get the trap bolts in the game, they become the easiest enemy in the entire game to beat. Once you get trap bolts, all you needed to do was place them on the floor in between you and the big daddy, and stupidly, he will come charging at you like a crack addict to a syringe and just kill himself going through all the trap bolts. The most iconic character of the game, the motherfucker on the cover of the game, is reduced to one stupid son of a bitch, man. Now, thankfully, the story of this game is fantastic enough to look past that shit, but you can't overlook the fact that the Big Daddy doesn't really provide you a challenge once you gain trap bolts. Sure, you could go mano a mano and try and take him out with a shotgun or even your melee wrench and shit like that. You want to be a badass, by all means, go ahead. But the trap bolt strategy shows there's a weakness in his AI. Had the trap bolts not been in the game, he would have been a bitch to kill. But with them in the game, he's reduced to a useless enemy because he doesn't adapt to the fact that he just runs straight at you every single time. Fontaine as the end boss, though, he's a damn good boss fight. And that's what I feel like the Big Daddy fights should have resembled, because that shit wasn't fucking easy at the end of the game. You had to bring everything to beat that motherfucker. Against the Big Daddy, all you needed was trap bolts. Now, aside from the controls issue and the AI issues with the enemy, none of that will take away from your experience with this game. Absolutely none of it. It is easily one of the best games on this console generation, and still worth playing if anyone were to ever go back and want to try this game out. Obviously, I avoided as many spoilers as possible I could with the game, because it's certainly not something I would want to spoil for those of you who still want to go out and play the shit. If you haven't played Bioshock, go play it. You guys see plenty of times, I don't hold any punches when it comes to games, and I will tell you if a game is shitty or not. So for me to say this is one of the top 2 campaign games that I have personally played, that says something. It's worthy of all its praise, and damn sure delivers one of the best stories you can imagine. All those critical acclaims that it received, all those Game of the Year awards that it received, this game deserves it. Unquestionably deserves all the attention it received. Now, unfortunately, Bioshock 2 was then created. Oh man, that fucking game. But that'll be for tomorrow, because that game is surely not going to get the critical acclaim that this game actually gets. But like I said, that's tomorrow, because this video is now done. So you have something to look forward to tomorrow. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you in tomorrow's video, which will be Bioshock 2.